Welcome to Jools and Jim's Joyride. Wind the cranking handle, start the engine, and prepare yourself for a joyride. Here we go again, happy as can be. Our guest today is also known as the Gorgon, the Mesopotamian miracle, the human sponge, Mr. Giggleswick, and the saucy sod. He is, of course, the award-winning artist Martin Creed.
Artist, musician.
Musician.
Yes, exactly. All-round, incredible
all-rounder.
Yes, marvellous that we've got you here today, Martin. Leading artist. Actually, we were just talking about your breakfast before we have anything, because often, to test the microphones, to test the level, they'll often say, what did you have for breakfast? So often when the Prime Minister's being interviewed, they'll say to off camera, what did you have for breakfast?
Sugar puffs.
I don't know, but just to get a level. But
sugar puffs and some Ribena.
but Martin, you did have an interesting breakfast.
Yeah. Well, it was spinach, which was put in the microwave.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't tell you that.
Controversial.
And there's microwave spinach and also eggs.
Yeah.
Which were all
And
scrambled,
so
which are also actually microwaved as well.
A regular thing, a regular event, an adventurous breakfast. It is
try-
adventurous, but it's very nice. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, I always try and have a green thing with 2 eggs.
A green thing, though, you say, not a green thing. So it could be a turtle or terrapin or something.
Are you a transport person? I mean, you get around. You've travelled the world and had installations all over the world.
I like I think I like travelling, because I think when you're travelling, often you feel like a great potential. You know,
It feels like you're doing something.
It's great hope. You're all, you're in between. You're kind of always hope for the future when you're travelling. Because you're all, rather than just arriving or leaving.
But do you like what's that little car you've got? I've seen your car. Is it a Micra?
It's a Panda.
A Panda, and it's an old one, isn't it?
Fiat Panda. Not to be confused with a police Panda car. I bought that car to learn to drive in.
God, I really like it.
When?
Well, but that was the thing. I didn't learn to drive until I was about late 30s or 40s.
And you got that car that's. And which is also full of tissues.
Of lies or of...
It is. I was astonished that many tissues could be fitted into a footwell and passenger seat.
What is the purpose of the multi-tissued?
The tissues are wet wipes, and it predates the COVID thing. I got addicted to washing my hands, as a thing to do. As I look back on it, I feel like it was when I gave up smoking. I used to smoke a huge amount, and when I gave up smoking, I think I took up
hand washing,
wet wipes.
Oh, just wet wipes.
Aye, wet wipes, and I feel like it was the same thing, because like you've got a packet.
Yeah,
in your pocket.
And you could always round off a meal with a nice wet wipe, or sex, or whatever the.
But also, I think the thing about wet wipes is that because if you throw a wet wipe in the air, it behaves a bit like smoke. It kind of wisps.
Yes.
Wisps.
Yes.
And so and I feel like I like that about smoking. When I used to smoke, I used to.
So is that what you were looking for?
I
like
cloud.
that. I love that. I love being in places. I mean, for a long time, if I saw people smoking in the street, I'd bring them into my house to create a beautiful cloud. I love that cloud. It's a magical sort of Gandalfian cloud.
In a pub, when you sit, early morning with the sun shining through and a thin layer of cigarette smoke.
Yes,
that's a nice look. But as you said, like when you do throw a wet wipe up in the air, it can create an image of smoke. But you can do the same thing with a carrier bag and a hairdryer.
How does that? Oh, I see. What the carrier bag? Yeah,
and just have a hairdryer and blow it up into the air.
Although I suppose it's quite. Whereas a cigarette smoke is quite relaxing to look at, the noise of the hairdryer and the buffeting of the bag, which would sound like sort of thunder, wouldn't be quite so relaxing, would it? I suppose. What car did you learn to drive in?
A Renault 4.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
I had a Renault. We had a Renault.
My dad
4.
had one, and it had a gear stick in the dashboard. It had a very continental approach. The French were going, let's have an unusual gear stick in a strange place.
Yes.
So it was like stuck out of the clock.
And somebody told me that was because, the French roads, you have to have a gear stick there because of the French roads, you see.
Really? What?
Well, I don't know what that meant really, but I went, oh,
you know, like the two CVs, and they said they were designed to drive up and down ploughed fields. Do you believe that?
No.
Nah. I mean, why would you want it? If you were ploughing a field, you'd get in a tractor, not in a 2CV.
That's right. But going back to your the journey, because in the journey, once you're on the journey, there was an idea that something you didn't quite know what was going to happen.
When I was 15, I had this friend that was Polish, and I was just getting into art, or what gets called art, and because of his Polish relatives, we went on this art course in Poland, in Krakow.
Oh.
Krakow.
Had you ever been to anywhere to Poland before when you were age 16, anywhere like that?
No. I mean, I'd been to Germany a bit, because when I was growing up, we used to go to Germany a lot, because my mum's German. So, but I never on an aeroplane. I never went on an aeroplane.
How did you get to Germany?
Car and train. Car. We used to drive down to Harwich or one of those places.
Oh, I'm getting a ferry.
Over to Holland.
And where were they in Germany? Where was your mother's family?
They were in Hanover.
It's quite a long way to drive. Did you stop on the way?
I don't remember that. I just remember being there. I just think that we might, because I didn't fly until I was in my 20s. I remember the first place I ever flew to was Milan when I was about 26.
So going back to when you went to Krakow.
So we went by train. That was
age 16.
15 in fact.
15.
I remember the train that went all, on the boat train, they called it, that went over, and then it went.
Was this on a ferry as well?
The ferry.
And that's across the North Sea, so that must have been rough, isn't it?
And then from Holland, and then I remember when it got to Berlin, and Berlin at that time was split East and West Berlin, and then when it crossed into the Eastern Bloc, the train then suddenly got really slow.
And
the whole thing took about 2 days.
And once you got into the eastern part, did people come around and have to check your passport and all of that? And
guards.
There's a friend of mine called Axel Swingenberger, who is the leading boogie woogie pianist. That's his real name, the leading boogie woogie pianist of Germany. He was a railway enthusiast. He owns a locomotive. And I'd done lots of shows with him over the years. And after knowing for some years, I said, "By the way, Axel, do you have any carriages to go with your locomotive?" And he said, "Yes, I do." I said, "How many do you have?" He said, "I've got about 40." 40 carriages? He's got 40.
What, he travels around Germany?
No, he keeps them in a sidings in the old East Germany because it was cheap. Anyway, one of them, which he's doing up at the moment, which is his best, because I said, "What's your best carriage?" It was a carriage that was owned originally. It was a restaurant car. It was then converted in the 1930s. It was then converted and used by the Nazis because it was so grand. And then after the war, the Americans had it for a little bit, and then the East Germans had it, and they used it for their top officials to be moved around it. Anyway, he's restoring it, and in the process of restoring this train, he's taken the wooden panelling off. And they found, on this one carriage, they found 14 microphones where the Stasi were listening to their own top officials to see what they had to say. And in the restoration, his big question was, in the restoration of the train, do you then include, do you restore it with the microphones?
Yeah,
back
of course
in
you
there?
do.
I suppose,
because that's the story, isn't it? So he's Germany's #1 boogie woogie pianist.
Yes, in Germany.
And did you announce yourself as Britain's #1?
Yes, and then we have a playoff. People like that.
And you all meet together, all the countries in the world.
Yes.
The leading boogie woogie pianist.
Yeah, we do.
Seamus O'Boogie from Ireland.
Yes, yeah. But so Martin, going back to your journey, because I like this journey, I was only interjecting that to give a taste of what the railways
that seems
might have been, in those Cold War days. So there you are in the Cold War. You've crossed the border with your friends. You're only 15 on the train.
About the train journey, I just remember socks a lot, kind of socks.
On the train?
Because because the carriages, those European carriages that convert from being upright seats, the seats all slide down and it becomes like a sleeper. And then I just remember big guys with socks, and you go in and it'd be like all these socks everywhere smelling.
So they're just dangling the socks. They just chucked the socks off and got into bed?
I remember the socks. And then when we got to Poland, we got to Warsaw before and then Poland was under martial law then. It was really serious, kind of like, we'd always heard about these steelworks. You know how they had all these steelworks, big industry, heavy industry, and we thought it'd be brilliant to go to the steelworks and take photographs And that's what we did, and we got arrested.
But
we
hold
weren't
on,
allowed to take photographs.
But when you say, I mean, I would think it's quite fun to take photographs of large industrial buildings, but it's pretty unusual. I mean, I don't mind doing that, but it's not everybody's sort of thing. I mean, why did you want to do that? What was your reason for doing it?
I don't know. I think we were basically art students. That, we'd read about Polish artists, and maybe it was kind of like those big kind of like the Russian art where they idealise the workers and
Eisenstein's
factories.
Yes, and there's the workers, victorious, muscular workers, happy in their work, and
maybe I'd seen in history books this kind. It must have been that I'd seen all these kind of Russian paintings or Eastern Bloc. And I don't know. I must have. That's can be the only reason why we wanted to go to the steelworks at the end of the tram lines.
But they do look. There is something. I think it's big industrial buildings like that are sort of fascinating. But the authorities thought otherwise. So what happened?
And so we got arrested by the police, and then because you weren't allowed to take, because they thought we were spies. We just get taken to this police station. We get interrogated
in Polish.
Yeah, no one could speak English. They did that thing that they do where they take the film out of the camera,
flamboyantly throw it across the
flourish.
Were you very frightened? Do you think? Oh, wait a minute, they might be.
I was frightened when we were put in the back of the car. Then I was frightened when we got arrested. I was frightened, but then when we were at the police station, and then they took the film out, and then we were left in this room, and then they came back. They'd obviously decided that we were just kids. That we were, and I remember then they brought cherries. He came back with a plate of cherries, and I now later I understood that cherries that's the ultimate sign. It's like a
sign of forgiveness.
And
then you handed over a lemon, and they were all friends forever.
Do you still see them at Christmas and things?
But then it was all okay.
Good. But after that, so Martin, that was a train journey. Then you got. How about? But then, did you get into some car journeys?
Well, it was only later, that I learned to drive, because when I was about 15, 16, whenever you're allowed to learn to drive, is it 16 or 17?
I think it's 17 now, isn't it?
Because I was always the younger of my year at school, so all of my friends learned to drive before me, and consequently, I didn't want to learn to drive. So I was like, I'm not a driver,
Some people aren't. They think.
You can usually tell a driver,
yeah, exactly.
I'm into art. And
No, I would. If you had a lineup, like a police lineup, and said which one of these is the non-driver, I'd probably, if you were in that lineup, I'd say he's the non-driver.
I didn't want to be a driver.
Well, you don't have to be.
Well, I'm not anymore But then later, I started learning to drive when I was about 40. So, and I always remember my therapist saying, like taking control, getting behind the wheel of your life.
Oh, taking control, but behind using the car as a metaphor.
Yeah, absolutely.
We haven't had that before. That's right. Your life is a car.
You're taking control.
Yes.
You get your.
What sort of interior have you got? And without being personal, all of those things. What's your performance like? It doesn't matter. We're just here to get. Are you what car? Well, all right. Let's think about this. If we were a car or a vehicle, what vehicle would we be?
Well, mine would be multifaceted, and also it would be that to carry heavy loads.
Yes.
One,
it'd have different names.
Well,
one
that morphic. I don't think there is one, but a multi-purpose vehicle. I think
I'd be a Mark 10 Jag, slightly overweight.
Low and flat.
Nice, low and flat. Quite nice looking, not particularly reliable, but but quite agreeable and
thirsty.
Yes, very thirsty.
I'd definitely be a
I think
Fiat,
you are.
Fiat
The car that
you would be a fan. You are your car.
I would.
Yeah.
Because I loved it, but I think of it. I think of it as like a piece of clothing.
Yes.
And I loved with the Panda. I still don't really like being in bigger cars because I like it that I can feel the ceiling on my head, and I can feel the door on my arm, and you're wearing it.
Well, one of your really great works was the I think it's in New Zealand. Everything's going to be all right.
Aye.
It's installed in New Zealand. And to get to New Zealand, that's a long... okay, you can't drive there.
No, and you can't go by train. No, I definitely flew there, and I get really into flying after. Although, I remember once I went to Australia for one night.
Wow.
What, from Britain?
Yeah.
What?
Because I had to go there on they call it a site visit.
Yeah.
To visit this museum, and I was like, I don't want to go, But but one of the things about travelling that I've always thought is better to. If I do a show and things, I often get very depressed. If I stay around after. It's better to get moving quickly, because you can get really stuck in the mud.
Again, and then the moving helps you bring with positivity again. Yeah.
And that's the good thing about travelling, because I think I naturally get stuck in the mud at home. I'm like a hoarder, and I control my, I've got my things where I want them, and it can get really stuck. And I feel that's unhealthy for me. So if I'm out, if I'm travelling, I don't own my place. I have to leave, I'm quite polite, so I leave it in a relatively clean state.
Do you completely clean your own hotel room when you're finished?
Well, I don't like cleaners in.
I can never understand. What, in a hotel room? I'm always astonished at how people leave hotel rooms. I'd go on tour with Bob quite often, and I would keep my hotel room very clean, spotless, and make the bed the next day. Within 5 minutes of getting into a hotel room, like, Bob would rip all the sheets off, empty his suitcase on the floor, knock the kettle over and everything, and it would be an absolute trash mount within 5 minutes.
But when you say you make the bed, that might be a mistake, because then, see, Martin and I might be the next guest in the hotel where you've made the bed. They'll see the bed's made, assume the room's been done, and then we get in your dirty sheets.
Well,
we don't want that, do we?
Wouldn't make it. I just don't like seeing an unmade bed. I don't like the look of it.
Who does?
I was in a hotel in France once at the Cannes Film Festival, and when I got shown into my room, they said, Brad Pitt was in there half an hour ago. He's just left. And I was thinking, have you had time to change the sheets then? Because I don't want to get into Brad Pitt's dirt.
That's showbiz gold.
Yeah.
So you went to Australia, Martin, for one night.
Aye.
One night. It's a long journey. That is a long journey.
Aye, and I suppose that was because of the fear of getting stuck, and
And then when did you go after you left Australia?
Back to London.
Whoa.
Aye.
That's a long journey, isn't it?
People say it takes, for every 1 hour of time difference, they say you need 1 day to acclimatise. So if you go to somewhere where there's a 5 hour time difference, you need 5 days to get over to start feeling just normal.
I think that might be an exaggeration though, because I tour in Europe a lot, and once you're driven over, you don't really notice that there's only an hour.
Well, that's drives it, so you can take it slowly going through
I see. You
time.
Just become, yes.
But so you say it's 5 days to get over.
So if you go to New York, you need 5 days to get over the jet lag.
Is that the
it's
amount?
It's just a theory.
So the amount of hours.
I'm not.
The amount of hours it takes.
I don't stand behind this theory.
No, exactly. It's just it's interesting to know the theory, though.
It's like they say, if you have a relationship. And it finishes, so it's 10 years. It takes 10 minutes to get over it.
That long. And now, a message from our sponsors.
I've just started keeping snakes.
Cobras?
No, it's true.
I've started keeping cattle.
Bullocks?
No, it's true.
If you'd like to keep a pet, then why not try Critter's Pet Shop in Sydenham? I reckon you're a cyclist. Are you a cyclist?
I'm a cyclist.
I bet you, because you've got the look. Once again, if there was a lineup, you said, what does that bloke do? I said, it's either a cycle or a rowing boat. But I'd have my money on a cyclist.
What style of cycle have you got?
I've got a Brompton.
Oh yeah.
And it is great. The Brompton.
Is that the little one?
It's the one that folds up.
Yes.
The Brompton is a great.
Very Thunderbirds, because where do you fold it in? Where do you take it? On the train? Well,
it's good because you can go out on your bike, and then you can get a taxi home. You know, you can, because that's the thing. I think the freedom of, I think that's the good thing about driving is if you the fact that you can just change direction. It's more difficult on a train or an aeroplane to.
Yes.
But and then the bicycle's the ultimate one, I think, for that. Which is why I think cyclists get a hard time sometimes from drivers because the cyclists can just change direction and go up on the pavement. And
also, I think that's right, and the cyclist doesn't think the rules apply to them. I mean, when I cycle through, when I'm again on tour, I always get bicycles. I was in Hanover actually, and I'm trundling along through the main shopping street, and suddenly all these people are shouting at me. There's no cycling. And they're very good at sort of obeying the rules there. So, I just don't know when, what
did you do? Give them the finger and said, I'm British, I don't care.
No, I sort of wasn't sure. So I got off my bike and pushed it for a little bit and then got a bit confused.
But is that or would you got in trouble for just simply having a bike there?
No, I think but that's the thing. Most European cities are much easier to cycle around.
I used to cycle a lot. And here's a couple of interesting stories. I lived in Brixton. I used to go and cycle into the middle of London to work there, and I used to chain my bike up to a tree outside our house. Someone then one day sawed the tree down and nicked the bike. But it was a big tree as well. They actually took quite a bit of effort to saw the tree down.
Was it a very good bike?
Not really, no. I've always had incidents on Millbank. It seems at cycling. Yeah, I was a famous politician knocked me over off my bike once.
Would you be prepared to name names?
Do you know what? I can't remember. I think it was Douglas Hurd. Do you know? I recognise him because of his ice cream shaped hair.
Yeah,
I think it was Douglas Hurd. And another time I was on.
Well, hang on. But let's just go back. You saying that the Home Secretary was just knocked you off your bike?
Yeah, he swerved round. Well, he didn't. His driver swerved round the corner.
Oh yeah, he's driving.
And I just went into the side and over the back of his boot.
And what did but he would have been his Home Secretary, so he would have had a security detail. Did they not sort of pin you to the ground as a suspected?
No, it wasn't. It was their fault. He just cut me up, and I just went over. My bike hit the back of his car.
So did they stop?
His limousine.
Did they stop?
No, they just carried on. I just saw him giving me the finger out of his window.
But his ice cream hair bobbing around and him sort of left you for dead on the side of the road.
Another time I was on Millbank, I was riding along on my bike, and I saw Bing Crosby in the back of a Rover P5B, and I fell off onto a Chelsea pensioner and knocked his sandwich out of his hand.
Really?
It's incredible, isn't it?
Aye. But I grew up going on family cycling holidays, actually.
Oh, what sort of distance?
Well, long, like up through, like, the west coast of Scotland, from Glasgow.
Loch Lomond.
Aye, up. But then right around the west coast up to, John O'Groats and down, like, big loop.
So the whole family would go?
Aye, cycling like 50 miles a day, staying in youth hostels and...
How old were you then?
It'd just be raining all the time.
And that was your summer holidays?
Aye, it was like 8, 9, 10 years old, 11. 10, 11.
What do you wear when you're cycling?
You mean nowadays?
Well, both really, I suppose. Yes. Yeah. What did you start off and what did it evolve into?
Well, then I remember perhaps being encouraged to wear some sort of cagoule, because of the rain. But then I always thought it was silly because you just get wet. It all kind of seeps in anyway. You may as well just wear,
that's a great
shorts and as long as you're warm enough.
Exactly.
That's a great holiday, though, isn't it? Cycling. How did you feel if you're 8 and
I mean, I liked it.
Your mum and dad say, "Right, we're off on holiday now. Get your cagoule out and your bike and start pedalling."
It did seem like quite hard work sometimes.
Well, it would be.
But nowadays, how would you wear for your cycling?
Well, now I like the idea of wearing exactly this, of not changing your clothes at all. So if you're going out to some special fancy do, to be able to wear the same clothes for cycling as at the fancy do.
So you're wearing a dinner jacket then, or a ball gown on your cycle?
Well, I don't know if it. I like seeing a guy in a suit, with one cycle clip still on that he's forgotten about.
Or maybe just on the chain side. because that was the point of it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To protect your
'cause
turn
that's
up from the
only-
chain, getting trapped in the chain.
That's right, in fact. Yeah.
Especially when they have, Jim the other day appeared in some fantastic trousers that were with a turn up, which I would say was the trousers were maybe wider than your shoes.
Yeah, it was acres of
really?
tweed.
Yes.
Yeah. That with something like that, you definitely need bicycle clips. Several actually on those trousers.
Yeah.
I cycled from Brixton to Brighton once, and it was so hot, and I was so knackered when I got there. I fell asleep on the beach with my top off, and got so horribly sunburned that I had to lie in bed with my feet up on a box for like days on end because I couldn't bear anything touching me.
Oh.
And all the skin peeled off.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was quite a good idea to get a mannequin and take all the skin off and apply it to the mannequins to see if I had a full body full of skin that I could peel off.
What a lovely thought.
Isn't it?
It's great. Silence of the lambs.
Martin, when you won the Turner Prize, what were you picked up in? Was it an Austin Princess limousine? What did they have?
When I won the Turner Prize, I was actually staying in a hotel because I'd moved away. I've lived in London all my life since I went to art school. In London, I came from Scotland to go to art school, and then I lived in London until I moved to Italy for 5 years. And that was when the Turner Prize happened. And so I'd travelled back and I stayed in a hotel just behind the Tate.
Oh.
Britain, as it's called, Tate Gallery, Tate Britain, on Millbank in London. And so I just walked. So I didn't get picked up. In fact, I walked from the hotel. It's the only hotel I've ever had something stolen from, was that hotel, actually. I had a mini disc player stolen.
How was it?
Which offset the prize money. I got and not really.
Huge event like that, completely marred by the removal of a mini disc player. And of course, the mini disc now. I mean, that's so rare. Nobody. That's like a Betamax tape player.
Right,
another one that never caught on.
And cassettes are back now.
But the whole point of the cassette was there's an example of the early way that people wanted to hear music as when they were travelling.
Aye.
Because you couldn't before then. You couldn't. I did have a car that had a record player in it, but it really didn't work very well at all. It played singles, and you had to be parked.
Yeah.
And it was rubbish.
My first car had a wax cylinder in it.
Yeah, really.
Well, Martin, what a delight it's been to find out all those stories about cycling and day trips to Australia.
Day trips to Australia and travelling during the Cold War under the age of 16 and being arrested. What a drama.
Yeah. Isn't it? Well, thank you very much.
And how fantastic that one of your great artworks is called Everything's Going to Be All Right. My last question is this. Did you think, if you think it will be, it'll help it be?
Aye, absolutely. I do. I very much believe that.
Well, unfold your bike and clear off.
Take the Brompton out of your pocket and hop it.
There's a Mercedes parked outside. There's a guy waiting for me.
You've ruined the image now. There goes Martin. Lovely artist Martin Creed. Looking forward to arriving at his next destination.
That's right, enjoying the journey as much as he's enjoyed the being with us.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
This podcast was produced and edited by Molly Stewart.
Sound engineers were James Stewart and George Latham.